Hi, it's Jane, and I have decided I will be starting a little bit of working on the knitting for my sleeves because I put that off for that sweater, and I really need to finish it. So I'm trying to pull out small pieces of things as I go to also work on those as well. But I'm gonna today. Join me while I work on crocheting this scrap blanket. I'm going to place a marker here so I know where I had basically started. And I'm just gonna work it as I go. This is my half double crochet. As many of you probably know, some of you who are new to my channel might not know, but welcome all of you, new or old folks. Appreciate you coming in, sitting and chatting with me, or listening to me chat, whichever. I would like to do more lives. I just haven't gotten to that point where I feel like I have the ability to do that. So I am working on that. The time god has not been generous enough for me to figure out a way to do that. Just because of things that are going on in my life right now. But do welcome me in. I'm glad that you are here. I don't know if you can hear Ronan back in the background. He's playing with his mouse, throwing it up in the air, and he is crazy for these mouses. And he loves playing fetch. I mean, he would have me play fetch all day with him if he could figure out a way to do it. And I have to tell you, yesterday was kind of cute because I had a hoodie on because yesterday was rainy, cloudy, kind of dark. But I was working in the sewing room, working on those, working on the bowl cozies. And, but I was at a point where I was cutting the darts, where the darts were, cutting off the excess fabric to start joining them and start sewing. And all of a sudden, I feel Ronan behind me in the chair. Not in the chair, but behind me where the chair was sitting. I feel him try to jump up and get into the hood of the hoodie I was wearing. I'm like, what are you doing? He was trying to get in there like it was some kind of hammock. But I had a laugh about that because he figured out it didn't work out so well. Because of where I was sitting, it would work fine like in this chair because there's that little bit of a ledge back here where the hoodie, he could sit in it and relax a bit and not worry about having to fall. But in the chair I was sitting, he'd slide right out of the hoodie. So it was just kind of a bit of a laughter. I have a battery that's giving me a signal. So I'm going to put you on hold while I change that battery. Okay, I am back for now. So yeah, I had a little bit of funny with him yesterday doing that kind of thing. And there are things he does that absolutely surprise me lately. I don't know what it is with him. Maybe it's spring. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, that's been kind of fun with him. I have had some struggles with Izzy lately, and a lot of that stems from, as you know, I've been concerned about her because she's really chunky. And I have found Ronan pretty much will gauge his eating, but Izzy does not. So I have started this thing with feeding them in the morning, basically letting them feed at their dry food cat bowls 3 times a day, like when I sit down to eat, putting their bowls down for them to eat, and then putting them up in between, and also working with Izzy to do a lot of more play, physical play, using that laser. Somehow I think I'm the only one that's really getting anything out of it. Because I'm basically, I take the laser and I run them through the entire house with the laser. And going back and forth and running here and there with them. I don't know, maybe she is getting something out of it. I'm just not seeing it yet. And so anyway, that's what I've been doing with the cats so far. The bowl cozies are coming along well. I think I had shown you the other day where some of the batting that I had purchased just was not working out. And it was supposedly batting that was made for this to be put in the microwave. But then when you got the package and you opened up the roll, on the actual roll where the fabric, where this batting was, said not for use in the microwave. And I'm like, that's the whole reason I bought it at that point. So what I'm doing with that is, as I find some kind of crochet project that I've made that can be used as a stuffed toy, whether it is a sewn project, and I do have some cut out, I just haven't gotten them sewn, or whether it is a crochet project, I am actually just shredding up that because the way it comes apart like cotton candy, it's easy for that. So I figure I can use that basically as the stuffing for it. So today, as I am filming, Creative Grandma is having her event in Williamsport, just a few miles away from me. And I could not attend because I had some things that I had already intended for in the morning. So the other thing is I'm not real big on where she's having it is not so bad, but not real big on their buffet. Let's put it that way. And I think that was the main cost of the event, was for the buffet that they will provide. And it just didn't sit well with me. But, and I will say this because I've been there at that buffet at the hotel, and Thomas and I have eaten there like 3 different times, and each time both of us got sick. So I avoid that place like the plague. I don't mind going for events there. I just don't like eating the food that they serve. I just don't trust it. But I'm hoping that perhaps things have changed over the past couple of years, because I've not been there since Thomas passed away. So maybe things have changed, and it's, you never know. Different hands, different people preparing, that kind of thing. But one of my friends, April Lee of Be Wild Crochet, which things in her life have not allowed her to open up and do more videos and share with us as much as she has in the past. But she is in attendance, and I would have loved to have been able to come meet her and just sit with her. I've told her that when she has appointments in Williamsport, because she does see a couple of doctors there, to let me know, and I'd be more than willing, if it's not a day I've got something else planned or whatever, to meet her and we could go for lunch or just go have coffee at a coffee shop or whatever, or sit at Panera and sit and talk for a little bit. So I'm missing that, and I'm missing both her and Glenda. I always love it when we get together. We have a great time together. There's a lot of laughter, there's a lot of talking, a lot of advice sharing. Glenda is a great resource, period, but she is also a great friend. And I do enjoy seeing her out in public. The times that we do see each other accidentally, it's always a great filling time. So Glenda is a very genuine person, genuine caring, and just glad to have her in my life, as I am April. April just lost her sister-in-law recently. I believe it was yesterday. So, keep her in your thoughts and prayers as she struggles with her sister-in-law's loss, in their family and that kind of thing. Loss is hard. We all deal with it from time to time. And sometimes we always think of loss as just people in our lives. But I know many times the loss is not only people for me. Many times it's things that I would normally be able to do just personally in my life, physically. There is that loss there that sometimes we have to deal with. The loss of ability to do certain things that we may have been able to do in the past. Strength, movement, crocheting, knitting. Sometimes we lose those abilities, and that's frustrating. So, yeah. But I am just thankful that the Lord has allowed me to continue to do something that I love. A couple of years ago, I had to have neck surgery, and this is back in 2009. And at that point, I had a herniated disc in my C6, C7. And what led us to find that I did have that herniated disc is when I was knitting, I would drop my knitting needles. I'd be knitting along and everything's going fine, and all of a sudden, my needle would fall out of my hands. And I had a lot of, not neck pain, but pain between the shoulder blades. And I just assumed that that was my arthritis, because I've had arthritis in my lower back and the middle of my back since I was 17, 16, 17. Actually, longer than that. I had before my mother passed, when she was so sick with her cancer, I was volunteering. So that was probably, I was driving at the end of age 14. So I was coming up on my 15th birthday, so I was already driving. And I had volunteered at the hospital as can't think of what they call it. Candy striper. And of course there they have you, the hospital always made sure that they had x-rays of your back, so that if anything happened and there was an injury or something, but they always had a baseline to go by. So, and at that point they had discovered that I had severe arthritis in my lower back as well as in between my shoulder blades. So I assumed that that's what that was. But when I started dropping my needles, I got a little bit concerned. So I called the doctor and told her, I said, the shoulder pain is worse, but I'm dropping my needles and I don't notice that my hands are numb. But I guess they are because I can't feel the needle slipping out of my hands. So she brought me in and kind of did a couple of things and sent me off for an MRI, and that's when they found that I had a huge bulging disc in that C6, C7 area. So they sent me to a neurologist. Of course, had to go to Danville, Geisinger system, because Williamsport at that time did not have a neurologist that could see me. So they sent me there, and he comes in after reviewing the video that they had put on the DVR for me. And he looked at me and he said, "You need surgery. If we don't do surgery," and I said, well, and I had asked him, I said, "Do we really have to do surgery? I'm not a real big fan doing kind of surgery there and all this." And he said to me, "Well, if we don't do surgery, you will be paralyzed, probably within the next month or so, from the chest down, and you will lose the use of both hands and your legs." And I just kind of looked at him and I was like, "Can I get a second opinion?" He kind of smiled at me and he goes, "If you want to go for a second opinion, go for it." And my husband kind of looked at me and he said, "No, we don't need a second opinion." Because he'd already started doing research on this doctor. And he said, "You need to have the surgery." So I said, "Okay, fine." And I was like, "All right, schedule me for the surgery." And this was on a Thursday that we saw this doctor. So he goes out to look at the surgical, schedule and to schedule me. And I'm thinking, in a couple of weeks, He comes back and he says, "I'll see you Tuesday morning." And my first thought was, oh my, you don't get in that quick for these kind of surgeries just because of how busy this hospital is and everything going on with it. So I was like, oh, okay. He goes, "Yeah, I moved you up on the schedule because of how serious your situation is." So I saw him that Thursday and had the surgery, and the rest is kind of history. And I am glad that I did have the surgery, but I still have a lot of ongoing issues because of that. It did exacerbate some of the arthritis, moved some of it into my neck. So, but at that time I was worried about the general sense of loss. Because one, I knew I wasn't going to be able to drive. I knew I wouldn't be able to do some things that I enjoyed doing for quite a while because of this surgery and whatnot. And there was that sense of loss. So sometimes we have to mourn those losses in our lives and get through them. I'm just glad it wasn't a permanent loss in that sense. I'm fighting with this yarn to get it untangled. I'm at the very tail end, and I need to add another yarn, but I need to get this untangled so I can get to adding that other yarn. So I'm playing with that while we're talking. So what are you guys working on? You still working on the same thing? You moved on to a new project? What kind of projects are you doing? Do you have a list of projects that you would like to do? I don't always keep a list of projects that I would like to do. Generally what happens is I have ideas of things I would like to do, and then here comes along somebody with a video showing something that they've made, something adorable, cute, beautiful, or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I want to make one. And then I get distracted. Do any of you do that? I quite frequently do that. And I wish I wouldn't. That's where I say I have craft ADD. And I'm sticking to that. It's what I call it. That's what it is for me. So, all right. Now that we've got that untangled. I don't know about you, but I have to laugh because I find it interesting how negative a lot of people are with each presidency. And I admit, some of these presidents that we've had, I didn't care for. Couldn't stand them. Didn't like anything they did. However, I think when they've done something positive, it's good to call that out, even if you don't care for that particular person. I'm getting ready to add another yarn. So let me reach in here and grab one. And get it ready to go. Get it pulled out. This is a kind of a dusky teal, I guess is what I would call it. Again, it does feel like a 3-weight, or a very thin 4-weight. But I'm going to go ahead and use these up. The whole idea is to get through this bag and to use up what's in here because I have no idea where else I would put it. And like I said, that's just the way I'm going to roll with this to get rid of some of these things. Some of these extra skeins that I have no idea what to do with. And regardless, it'll make a colorful blanket and somebody will be absolutely thrilled with that. Isn't that the point? Just to be able to use up our scraps and use them all together. Get rid of them. I saw in my area, let me get a drink. Limeade. I saw in my area where someone had posted on Facebook, the marketplace. It was a box of different yarns that they had, and they were wanting, I think, $20, $25 for the box of yarn. And a lot of it was just balls of scraps and a couple of skeins, but I wouldn't say it was $20 worth. But it was interesting to see what was in there. And then this person came back and had posted someone had taken the baby yarn, because there was baby yarns, different weights. Someone had taken the pink baby yarn, but didn't want the rest of it, so she just sold that skein to them. And I'm assuming that this person is fairly new to using yarn. Just because of the way that she had kept all of that yarn. I skipped a whole bunch of that new yarn holding it together. But she has had that listed a couple of times. And my first thought is, why aren't you following through with getting rid of that? Or has she found that a lot of people just aren't interested in that box of yarn? And it didn't look like it was that big a box of yarn. But for whatever reason, just find it interesting. But anyway, where I was getting to, see how my mind works? It just rambles. Goes here, there, everywhere. I was struck by the deal that Trump had made with the UK, and a lot of people saying it's not that big a deal. Yeah, it is. And there are several reasons it's a big deal. Some of our trade relations with the UK kind of gone downhill, and this is a great way to build that back up. And not only that, but we really need to build up our businesses. Trade is one way to do that. When you have someone purchasing products that the U.S. is making, gets our products out into that country, the possibility of it into other countries, but it also employs people. You know, we have seen tremendous amount of companies bringing manufacturing back to this country. We have seen a lot of large companies pledge to build all kinds of different manufacturing in the U.S. again with some pretty good competitive rates. Need to clear my throat because of the allergies. But the most impressive thing I thought about that was the phone call that he took with the Prime Minister. Live. That is one of the reasons I voted for this president that we currently have. I knew there would be transparency. There was transparency before, and I knew there would be transparency again. I knew also that he is a big advocate of being proud of our country, proud of the things that we make. So yeah, I'm glad to see some of that coming back to the U.S. I don't know if many of you realize some of the issues with the Chinese. They have a ton of people who have no work whatsoever. You know, they for years have made work for people in order for them to have what they call a living wage in China, which for most of us is a lot more than $1.60 a day. I think some folks make $3 a day, and that's pretty impressive. And they always talk about the state capitalism that they have there. But you have to remember that their state capitalism they talk about is way different than any other state capitalism. So, you know, I was glad to see that it was very open, very transparent. I don't always agree with things that he does, things that he says. That's okay. Not supposed to with each president. So, yeah, I'm good. I'm glad to see that kind of thing. China right now, I hear a lot of folks talking about the amount of ships that aren't coming in from China. there are still ships coming in from China. They're not happy about it. There are not as many coming in because of the tariff wars, if you want to call it there. But tariffs do work, believe it or not. But if you're at any port that brings in container ships, you're still seeing containers coming in. You're still seeing those ships coming in. You're still seeing those being moved at the same fast pace as the way that they would come drop off all these containers that took months sometimes for them to go through. No. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe not. But you got to remember, China has a whole generation of people that have no work whatsoever. So many times what they would do is they would build a city. No one lives in the city. They would just build a city. Build a bridge. Nobody uses. You know, just because they could. Right now they're doing a lot of war games in and around Taiwan, trying to show a force, and there's these people that are predicting that they plan on strategically attacking Taiwan to hold it. They would like to own and operate everything in and out of Taiwan. And of course, along with that, this week, the U.S. has had what they call, these are elephant parades. Elephant parades are basically where your military shows off what they got. You know, they bring in these big ships, or, you know, do a lot of flybys and submarines showing up off the coast there, kind of to give you an idea of, you know, we got a lot more than you think, and we're watching you, we got eyes on you. These are games that all countries play with each other. I had a boyfriend a long time ago that was, his main thing was submarines. One of the folks that worked on the engines, keep them clean and running and all that kind of stuff. And he would laugh because I would say, you know, and even back then, I would say, I read where, you know, the Russians were off the coast of California and showing up and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, does that really happen? He started laughing. He said, oh yeah, we do that to each other all the time. Do that with other countries. We'll bring that ship up so that they can see, we see them. We're watching them. He said, you have no idea how much that helps with keeping peace in the world. So I do think that's interesting. I think it's interesting, the whole issue with the school in Columbia. As I was saying, I was going to pause you because we're coming up where my camera's going to stop recording. It only does so many minutes, which I think is interesting because even though it only does so many minutes, you know, the memory card holds much longer, but I can't fight with some of these camera things. I don't know why they do that. But anyway, this whole thing with the school, Columbia, with the Free Palestine protesters that came in. And I do think it's funny the way that they locked them in. The police locked them in. The school officials, their public safety, locked them all in, and they have to show, you know, because they got their face covered. They're wearing masks and all kinds of stuff, try to hide their identity. Which, I'm sorry, if you're out protesting or, you know, advocating for one thing or another, But you're afraid to show your face. You won't show your face. That makes you a coward in my book. But, so they locked them in. They have to show ID to get out. And of course, many of them are being arrested because they have created a disturbance. I think we need to see more colleges do that. I got no problem with people protesting, yelling, carrying signs, whatever. But when you go in to try to take over a university, whether it's a library, the whatever, the dining hall, the pub area of the university, you're actively participating in terrorism. You are, because you're terrorizing other students. You're keeping them from being able to use the facilities that they paid for in their education, and I just think that's wrong. I wish you could see Ronan. He is sleeping in the corner on top of my shoes. I have a corner when I come in where I have one of those boot trays, and I put my shoes up there. The only thing is the corner that he's sitting in, normally this time of year, I have a pair of garden snips and a machete leaned up in that corner because generally I'm outside, fighting with the all natural part of the universe, the bamboo and the weeds and the grass and all that fun stuff. But he's sleeping over there in the corner on my shoes. Why do cats sleep on things like that? It's just bizarre. Crazy cats. What can I say? Need to get a little video of that because he cracks me up the way he does that. But anyway, that's kind of the things that are going on in this household and some of the thoughts that get going on my end. Hang on while I take a little video of him. And then I dropped the phone. Isn't that brilliant? That's okay. Now he's like, "What are you doing, Mom? You're interrupting my sleep. Stop it." Okay. Sorry. Sometimes my kids tell me that's the only way they get to see the cats. Which is kind of funny. Oh, goodness. Hang on. Out of that nonsense, I not only dropped my hook, but where I was at in my mind. Anyway. But yeah, I thought that was funny with the students, how that they had locked them in, that kind of thing. Like I said, we have in the U.S. freedom that a lot of other countries don't have. However, I do have an issue when some of the things that you do impede on the freedoms of others to get their education, to use the facilities where they're at, those kind of things. And I do think that they need to stop, really crack down on those. So a lot of people don't agree with Trump's defunding of universities. But, quite honestly, is that promoting your freedom to impose on others' freedom if you don't do something about it? Who knows? I don't know. But I do find it interesting how many people who think that due process is a necessity when dealing with illegal immigrants. You do know that President Clinton changed that, right? They took out due process for those who are here illegally. They do not have a right to due process because they are not American citizens. Our Constitution, we always think, extends to everyone. It does not. It extends to the Americans who live here. Are there ways that it can be extended? Maybe. You know, this whole issue of the illegal that was picked up years and years ago, if I remember correctly, for murder, and was not read his rights, the Miranda rights. Well, I don't care if you're legal or illegal, you should be told about your rights as they stand when you are being arrested. So that was part of things that were enacted to give people rights to access to attorney within our law system. But we don't have any laws on the book that give illegals the right to stay here. We don't. There are no laws in our books. Federal, most states do not have laws advocating for that. So, and I think too many times, you know, people want to give us the old, well, you know, their parents came when they were babies. It's not fair to send them back. There are consequences to our actions, to the actions our parents took. Stop wanting to blame someone for wanting to send you back to your home country when you came here illegally and you refused to do any attempts to become a legal citizen. I'm all for those folks who are working their way back, you know, working their way to become a legal citizen. There are ways to apply for those kind of things. But I don't know, I've seen time after time. And I'm sorry, folks, I grew up in New Mexico. There were a lot of illegals that came through New Mexico. Many of them were brought through coyotes. Many of them were brought through the gangs. You know, I grew up in a time when the Sinaloa gang and the Zeta gang were big in Roswell, New Mexico. And there were a lot of times that just driving, my girlfriend and I one time were driving one night and we were pulling in between, it was Firestone Company and Taco Bell, and we were pulling in the side road there to go to Taco Bell, and we were right in the middle of a shootout between these two gangs. So I'm sorry. That colors a lot of my feelings and dealings when I think of people who are here illegally. I saw a lot of that when I went to get help to watch my daughter's children when she was giving birth, and also to be present when her youngest was given birth. we're sitting there one morning and I'm like, why do I hear horses in the middle of town? She lived in a suburb, not a suburb, a very populated houses next to houses type neighborhood. She goes, oh, the coyotes across the street must have brought in a new group of illegals. And I said, what? I look out and in a fenced yard, chain link fence, it's about 3.5 feet high, the fence. There are 4 horses. I'm like, what the heck is that? And she tells me, oh yeah, they bring them in all the time. She said, normally it's every other week that they do here. And I said, so how many people do they bring in? She goes, well, she said, I was outside one night when they were bringing them into the house. She said, what she could see, she counted probably about 40 people, men, women, some children, going into a 3-bedroom house with 1 bathroom. So, I saw those things, and we saw those things growing up. So, yeah. I also experienced many times where in my classroom as a kid in elementary school, we would have kids that came in that were there to get an education, didn't speak a lick of English because they were migrant workers. Big difference. Families came with green cards to work. Several of those families chose to stay as American citizens. Was privileged to see them finally get their citizenship, become naturalized citizens, whole families. So, and one of my friends, their family invited me to that celebration when they received their naturalization papers, and it was a big party. It was fantastic. I was more than thrilled for them because they had done it the right way. But we tend to think that they just have a right to be here. And do I have sympathy for those kids that were brought here by their parents through no fault of their own? Yes, I do. However, there are consequences to the actions, the things that we do. And if we're not willing to take responsibility for those, we're always going to be complaining and whining about it. So yeah. Like I said, our experiences in life will often lead to some of what other people will say is prejudicism. You're being prejudiced, you're a racist. Well, I'm not a racist, but there are things that I've seen over my years, from childhood to adulthood, that make me question some of the things that we accept here in America. So, yeah. And, one of my favorite restaurants in town, many of those people that come through here are from Mexico, because the person who has started this Mexican restaurant came from Mexico, the Aztec region, became an American citizen, and wanted to bring those who wanted to come here to work the opportunity. But this is a business owner who sponsors these people, and he is the first to tell them when they're acting like idiots that he can let them go and send them back to their home country. And he uses that because he knows that it reflects on him himself. So, he stands behind his word. he takes the opportunity to sponsor those who come to our country and are willing and work hard to become American citizens. So yeah, those people that are crying the loudest, sponsor them. Become financially responsible for these people. Step up. So, yeah, I'm going to get off that soapbox. But I have enjoyed sitting here yammering at you and carrying on. But I'm going to let you go for now because I have a couple of other things I need to get done. And I will see you again soon. Everybody have a great week. Feel free to share your thoughts down below. But most of all, what are you working on? Let me know what's going on. Let me know your thoughts. See you guys soon. Bye.